Mysticism. Since I've been talking about mysticism a lot in some of my recent videos, I thought I'd talk a little bit more in depth about the different kinds of mystical experience that people do have, because there are people that actually really study this stuff, and it's really quite interesting. Some people even on a scientific or perhaps pseudo-scientific level who really get in and study what is happening in the mystical process. Particularly, you will find meditation being studied, precisely what effects it has on the brain, how it stimulates the frontal lobe, and what it does for us on a physiological level. Now, obviously, the physiological level is only one level. I am not trying to say that physiology is the only thing important to spirituality in any way, form, or fashion, but it is interesting to see that studied, to see what we can figure out scientifically being used to study mystical experience. We have people who are studying reincarnation, studying people who, children mostly, who claim to have been reincarnated. It almost always exclusively seems to happen with children, from the point that they start speaking to about age 6. I think I've talked about that before. And people are studying that, seeing whether or not it's really true and seeing how it correlates. And of course, near-death experiences is a really big one. I've heard people try to say that they can explain how near-death experiences happen physiologically. Personally, I don't know if that matters. I think there's a great many things that can be explained, but it doesn't take away their purpose and their meaning. Just because you explain how something happens, so what? And the experiences that people have during near-death experiences can completely change them for life. In fact, some studies seem to show that those near-death experiences are the most mind-altering, the most severely altering of all of the mystical experiences for whatever reason. The way that happens when people have, almost die. What goes on in their head so completely changes them. Obviously, people will be meditating, and they will mostly over time, like in Buddhism, Zen, Taoism, Hinduism, those sorts of things over time, through that meditation and through those mystical experiences, people's outlook changes and their mind shifts. But for some reason, that near-death experience seems to do it instantaneously. Through mind-altering drugs, people will have mystical experiences, and they tend to have somewhat temporary effects. We come to these realizations, supposedly when under the influence of various drugs, and aren't necessarily able to bring that back. We bring back bits and pieces of it, and perhaps that's part of the reason. Perhaps those are ways of touching other planes, but because they don't connect with us in a certain way, we can only bring back so much of it. And for whatever reason, that near-death experience, perhaps because we're there, perhaps because somehow our consciousness is literally on the edge between life and death, somehow it's able to pull more back, and it teaches us more. I don't know. But it's very interesting to look at that and study that, and the various types of mystical experience that people have had. One might even call alien visitation to be a type of mystical experience, depending on your feelings about aliens, whether aliens are real or not, whether they are spiritual beings, however you decide to look at that. People who are abducted or say that they have telepathic links to aliens. Of course, people can just be crazy, but then what is crazy? Maybe crazy people are the most sane. I don't know. Perhaps I'm nuts. I've certainly been asked that on a few occasions, so who knows? But all of those are possibilities. And if you are looking for ways to have mystical experiences, I don't personally suggest trying to get yourself killed. I guess it's cool when people do happen to have those experiences, but, obviously doing something like they did in Flatliners probably isn't the best way to do it. I will talk about drug use in a later video. For now, I'll simply say, yes, that's a possibility. I'm not going to be a proponent necessarily of drug use, but I'm not going to downplay it either. Obviously, people have their experiences when they're on drugs, and that's what they have. Meditation, personally for me, I think is the most important form of mystical experience. It is something that we can all do. Everyone, whether you're Christian or Buddhist or Hindu or Jewish, any neo-pagan, it doesn't matter. Everyone can meditate. I know that there are some Christians who will say, well, you shouldn't meditate. I think that may be more a misunderstanding of what meditation is. I think one person once said that prayer was when we speak to God and meditation is when we listen. That's one way to look at it. Certainly when you look at men like Thomas Merton, great Catholic monks who spend all their time in their own mystical tradition, and they're very much Christian, and technically Catholicism isn't exactly a Christian mythic tradition or a shall we say a mystical Christian tradition, but they certainly do have those experiences because they do meditate when they go over their prayers over and over and over again, over and over and over and over and over. They do have these ecstatic experiences. Those prayers work in very much the same way that mantras work for the Hindus. They're really the same thing. They accomplish the same purpose. And so anyone can do this. Don't be afraid of it. I know that some Christians will get all up in the, well, it's satanic and it's opening your mind to horrible things. Why? Well, okay, if you are a Christian and you do believe in God, then why be afraid of that? You know, if you're Christian, ask God to guide you as you meditate, but don't just back off and be scared of something you don't understand. It is really an amazing way to touch the divine, in a Christian sense, to speak with God. So all of those are possibilities. I'll talk about particular ones in more detail later. Again, I will talk about drugs. I get that question every so often. I keep promising to talk about it. I will talk about it. And I'm the Urban Omnist. I'll talk to you guys later. Look forward to the comments. And remember, guys, none of this works without you. So subscribe to our channel, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and above all, don't forget to send me those questions.